share the stories of the elders them who travel across big water for build Great Britain.
Come listen story now.
Tell your Marcus he can't go around giving the kids high kicks and stuff like that. You know, no, we won't tolerate that here. You know.
God, this is defending himself.
So, was there any special place you would go to relax, or what would you do?
Oh yeah. I would go to Harrogate.
Okay.
To the Turkish baths. That was my salvation. Once a month, without fail. Nothing would get in the way. I don't care what it was, who it was not going to get in the way of me and me having my Turkish bath, right? My steam baths. And so that day was set aside for me. It was a day that I set aside for me and only me. So I get up in the morning, whatever time I want to get up, make my breakfast. I would get the 36 bus to Harrogate.
Yes,
I would look out the windows as we went past the farms, watching the cows in the farm and the sheep and all that kind of stuff. And I would get to Harrogate, and then I would go shopping in Harrogate. TK Maxx was in Harrogate before it came to Leeds, so I knew TK Maxx well before it came to Leeds. I knew every shop in Harrogate, right? So I loved Harrogate for that, right? And then I would then go to my Turkish baths. Have my Turkish bath, spend hours and hours. I was always the last one. They would be throwing me out. I was always the last one to be thrown out the Turkish bath. And getting the last bus back to Leeds from Harrogate. And I came back refreshed, rejuvenated and relaxed. And Marcus would say to me, I think it's time for Harrogate. Right? Because I was getting shitty, you know what I mean, right? You know, if I was getting stroppy or, you know what I mean, losing me cool, you know, I think it's time for Harrogate. And he knew that when I came back, he could ask me for anything, because I'd be in a zen frame of mind. Oh, yeah, go ahead then, yeah, eat that, or take that, yeah, you know, kind of stuff. That's Turkish bath. And it's funny, because I enrolled other people. Yes. Other people wasn't going there, but because I found it such a respite for me that I shared that with other black women, and I organised black women's groups to go to Harrogate. And we would always have fun. You know, I would always take a group with me to Harrogate, and we'd have great fun. You know. So women's organisations, black women's organisations. I encourage them to go and do that.
So would you all do like Betty's as well?
Oh, of course, we go to Betty's first. I always go to Betty's first because it was our day.
Yeah.
You know, with splash out, we go to Betty's, have cream buns and scones and things and tea and you know, and then we would go to the Turkish baths. You know, we did it in style. That was my style day out. You know, yeah.
All right. Can you share any stories that you were told from when you was younger?
So here, if you need like a bit of context, it's like sometimes as young children, parents used to tell you a story or grandparents used to tell you stories, but usually the stories like in Jamaica, you know, you have your Anansi stories and there's always, do you know what I mean, meaning behind there, and it's like, were you ever told any stories? Is there any that you can recall?
They were very good at telling you what we call Jumbi stories, which is ghost stories.
Okay.
And I suppose that was it. That was a way of getting you to go to sleep and leave them alone. You know what I mean, right? You know, but then they would scare you so much. You go, I can't go to sleep because I'm thinking of sukuna, you know, skin. You know, oh gosh. So ghost stories were the stories that I would recall, that would relate back to the Caribbean. Jumpy stories, you know, that you don't go at midnight, and I don't never meet at a crossroad, you know, because you're gonna see Jumpy at the crossroad, or sukunas, or this or that, or man on a white horse, black heart man cut out your heart and stuff like that, all kinds of nonsense things, you know. So those were the stories I would.
So Jumpy is.
Ghost,
No, it's Kittitian witch.
Yeah, Duppy. Yeah.
Okay, that's really, really good.
Right. So as you know, I'm in my 20s.
Yeah.
So if there's any advice or anything you will tell my generation, what would it be?
About the Caribbean?
Just about anything about life, just to
Oh boy.
Are you a grandmother?
I am.
What would you say to your grandchild?
Have a plan.
Mm.
Have a plan and save your money. Save something. I did that. I think my first job when I left school, I earned £3.50.
Yeah.
£3.50 for the week. Right? So my mother got £1.50 for my keep, and I had to like tights and makeup and where to go to work and lunch. But out of the £3.50 I saved, I think I saved £1. Out of the £3.50, I saved £1.
Yeah.
Then I had my lunch, so £2.50. I don't know what I did however, but I saved from the get-go. I saved for my first job. I saved, and that is key and fundamental to whatever I've achieved today. That by just doing that underpinned, because it gave me a freedom that I had something to I could turn to something. Right, I had something to turn to.
You had a goal, didn't you?
Right, right. I had and to have a goal. Right, I don't care what the goal is. You can always stop and change it. Yeah. Right. That was having a goal was actually fundamental. Right, because I think not having, and I think particularly black people, and within school, we flounder. We go from here to there because we haven't got a goal, and in school. The one person in school was my Jamaican friend called Nelda Frater. When she was asked in school, what do you want to be? She always said a doctor. And a doctor she became. Right? I can't tell you another kid in that whole school, or at least in our the years that was there, that could say specifically and then work towards that. Right? When they asked me, I didn't know really what I wanted to be, because it wasn't, they didn't spend enough time kind of getting you to focus on and bringing that through. They didn't spend enough time what your skills and strengths were, right? To take you to a next point, right? To put you on that ladder and the next rung on the ladder. It wasn't identified in that clear guidelines, wasn't laid out. Right, that you needed to have, right? And I know you need to have these steps. Otherwise, you flounder around a lot of the time until such time that something becomes, by the grace of God, something crystallizes in you. You know what I mean, right? And you then say, right? Because I know you, right? And I know that Taekwondo would be your saving grace, right? And your drawing, you know what I mean, right? Your ability, God has given you gifts, right? Of art, right? And your skill, you took up through training, when your grandma, the Taekwondo thing, right? And so that gave you a purpose to do something, and that makes you a man. That gave you confidence, strength, and a perception of who you are. It strengthened, when it was all grey and woolly. You know what I mean, right? That somehow brought you back. It centered you. And from that center, you can then bounce off to somewhere where you need to go. And you're still on that path, that journey. We as black people, we don't sufficiently have that. And I think what gave me my strength was black power. Was kind of having a sense of who I am. You wouldn't fuck with me. Sorry. Right? Because I know who I am. Right? And if I try and you couldn't try, you might try to take it away by dissing me or embarrassing me. But it wouldn't really work. Yeah. Right? Because I know who I am. Right? So to know who you are, have a goal, and save. Yeah. Save some money. Always have some money. Because the money, because I saved, I did not go into council housing. Yeah. I went into private housing when I was just 19, right? I had private housing that was central heated. In those days, it wasn't like where you are now. We still had the big houses that we couldn't heat, right? We still had paraffin pans. You still had, you know what I mean, right? You could never get warm enough. Yeah. Coal fires, right? And because I had savings, right, I was able to go to the agent. The house I live in was brand new. I was the first person, which was unheard of, because all my friends were in council housing.
Yeah.
But I had private housing, central heating, fitted kitchens. You know what I mean, right? And from there, you know, that path, by having the money, it created a path, right, that was on a higher level for me. And from there, I built from there, right? So from there, my next goal was going to be, you know, I was going to go back.
Yeah.
I was going to go forward.
On your own.
Right, yeah. So from that, I founded HARBIO, which is a black organization. I'm the founding member of Leeds HARBIO, which was a hostel for homeless young black people aged 16 to 21, right? So I'm a founding member of that. And then from there, I went and did social work. And I also bought my first house. When I left HARBIO, and I bought my first home, right? And only because I saved 50 pence or a pound, right, when I left school, that I continued that habit of saving, that I had £10,000, right, when I was 30. I had £10,000 saved. I'd bought stocks and shares along the way, because my boyfriend, my son's father at the time, he was in that area of work, and so when I worked, I got my money, and he directed me to buy shares, right? And so I had that, and that gave me the deposit, right, for my first home, which I owned, and I still have that home, right? So yeah. So yeah, definitely do those things.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so I'm gonna ask you, how do you think that young people can be more resilient in this time?
In this time?
Yeah.
So we're going through the whole like George Floyd thing, and it's always been happening, but obviously everybody's seeing the harassment that our young people are facing. It's like, how do they build their resilience? Because what I'm finding is that they're not as mentally strong as what we have.
Yeah, because
so how do they build that resilience?
Young black people, those born here, they have to differentiate. Those of us born in the Caribbean, we had a different purpose and a different psychology to the black kids who was born here, right? So our way of being and thinking is different to your way of thinking who were born here. You have a different perception of life, right? So that we kind of cleared the way, right? And so what my son was born into a private housing, central heating, right? A parent who valued his education, right? My parent, they did not really, they entrusted their faith in the white society, in school, to provide an education for me, for us. But that ain't how it was, right? They trusted them to take care of us educationally, right, through the system, right? But the system wasn't geared towards black people empowerment, right? So you guys born into this, right? You're born into like I'm trying to say that. So I was born in the era of paraffin heaters, cold attics, coal fires,
condensation,
right? Condensation, all that kind of stuff. Walks, go back home, niggers, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But by the time my son was born in 1972, the people in England were becoming more attuned and less
direct,
overt in there, right? Because you know, white people, they would say under the breath, you know what I mean, right? Or they give the grin and their smile was a false smile. It was like this, and then straight away it would go back. It wasn't a genuine smile. You know what I mean, right? I find, and what we did, we founded organizations to fit, so we had something to hold us, right? My dad would have, we had parties every so often. My dad threw a party in our house. We owned our house that I grew up in, right? In fact, my parents had 2 houses. They had 15 Mexborough Avenue and 25 Mexborough Avenue. So they came with a grounding, right? Perception for life, right? And they came to work and work hard and save, get the children. You know what I mean, right? That was their focus, right? Our focus was to, from the Caribbean, was to do as well as we could do, but the system wasn't geared to enabling us to do that, to become that, right? So we struggled and floundered for a lot of the time. Though some made it out, some made it, but I think the majority of us we floundered for unnecessarily for a while, trying to find a footing of where we belong. Because we were fighting the fight all the time, where we were black, we in Chapeltown, they had this discrimination, housing, poor housing. We had riots in 81, the big riots that happened here. We had, all kind of stuff going on. We're trying to form, like HARBIO, a black organised to our kids. We're trying to look out to scrape up our kids, that we had to own our children. We had to own the community. We had to make things ourselves, because the council wasn't giving us anything, wasn't making us anything. We had to go and make a noise and say, we want this, we want that, right? And so we fought the fight, we fought the battles. And I find that the younger people, they came and had a softer landing, and had their perception of being was more Eurocentric.
Yeah.
Was more English, because then you went to school and you were on par with your white schoolmates. Through us, you didn't have an accent, for example, right? Because for Marcus, I would been here for a while. You know what I mean? He grew up, and then whether I wanted to speak Yorkshire or not, or the Queen's English or not, right? I did, right? And he reflected that, right? But when I came, it was different. So he had a softer landing in every way, in housing, in education, socially, in that I was more in thinking than my parents were. And he benefited from that, right? Because I had black books around that my mother and father would not have had. We had the mirror, this song, with my father was into backing horses. You know what I mean, right? That kind of stuff, right? I never backed a horse in my life, right? There was a horse called Beulah. I think I backed that a few times because it was called Beulah, right? But, you all had a different landing, a softer landing, where the platform that you all were standing on wasn't the same platform that I was standing on. And your perceptions were, you related easier to white people, right? I never had really, white people was never really my friends, right? I went to work with them, I spoke with them, I would have lunch with them, but I came back to my community, right? And I didn't have many white friends, right? I think I had a white friend at school, Priscilla, but then she was never, she didn't, I didn't really have any white friends. They weren't, I wasn't really part of that. Yeah. Whereas Marcus had white friends. He brought his friends home for tea or whatever, you know what I mean, right? Or he'd, and you'll have sleepovers and stuff like that. In our days, you couldn't put your black ass into a white people's house, they wouldn't have you, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. So it's a different time frame, a different way of being, a different way of perceiving the world, right? Is where you guys came into that. The transition had been made and you guys were in that middle thing, and you had a softer and a different perception of life. So the generation that came after me didn't have to fight. They never formed any organizations. We had, in Chapeltown, we had so many organizations. There was one for housing, education, for this, for that, for health. Mary Seacole, black nurses, for this, for, David Olawale, when they killed David Olawale, he lived in our house, right? And so, and the brother, the Black Power group that I was formed there, we got some white paint and we painted on Chapeltown Road. We know who killed David Olawale, right? So we put it out there, right? And we started at schools, right? My generation started Saturday schools.
Yeah.
We talked about Black Power. We talked about Egypt and where we came from. We talked about what we saw on Kunta Kinte's for Roots. And we were claiming our sense of self and power, right? And business and stuff like that. And then the kids after us didn't feel, they didn't feel that need to do that. They just felt comfortable in where they were at. Because it was less discriminatory, it was less overt,
yes.
And they slide into that, and they somehow managed to exist within that vacuum, that period, that they flourished in that. They didn't have to fight the fight.
I'm going to sort of like ask, you see, I get the direct and indirect racism, but racism is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think, because I've told my son about racism, do you know what I mean? So he knows it exists. And when I've gone to school to deal with issues, and it's like I've said to him, like, this is just an example of, a macro version or micro version of racism. And the teachers were so upset. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, but I'm calling you out, but why are you getting upset when it's true?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
offense.
maybe not a lot of parents talk about racism because nobody's calling you the N-word directly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But there's still that.
Yeah. And my parents never spoke of it either.
Okay.
No. Because they came to get by. And to speak of this, no, they would get white people mad and angry.
Yes.
And you get mad and angry, and they would, if you were due for a promotion or due for something, they wouldn't get it.
Yes.
We weren't stupid. They still work out.
Yes.
They want, they worked out that you don't bother go there. You stay focused on what you have to stay focused on, right? Because you're gonna make them angry and make them. That when I was Black Power, my mum, don't speak of that. Don't wear your badge to work. Don't let people know that, you know what I mean, right? Well, Black Power, you're always talking about Black Power. You're living in England now, you're talking about Black Power for, and they would, these are under the carpet, and, don't talk about it. It gets them angry. Yeah. We don't want to get white people angry, right? Right? We want to stay calm and, on that even keel. We want to do what we're doing, and we don't want to be disrupted, you know what I mean, right? So, yeah. But I would say, no, I'm speaking out.
Yeah.
Right? And injustice has been done here. They ought to know, right? They don't want to know. But, yeah.
So are you saying that, because the question was about resilience, are you saying that our young people, because they're not feeling or going through what you've gone through, that
yes,
resilience...
they haven't had a rough ride.
Yeah.
They really haven't had the rough ride that we had. Yeah. They haven't experienced that. Yeah. Because we experienced that for them.
Yes.
What they experienced was, like I said, a softer landing,
yes.
A smoother ride. I'm not saying it was perfect,
no.
But it was not, and they made the best. They were making the best of their smooth ride, which was getting on, because then they had white friends. They spoke, I said they didn't have any accent, so there was no accent to grind, you know what I mean, right? And they had similarity. Oh, did you see on TV last night? Did you see the Muppets,
no.
Right? Right? They had things in common then, right? Everyone had a TV then back home. When I was a kid, when I first came, there was one TV and we all sat around, and the whole household, you know what I mean, right? Because we had tenants, you know what I mean? People lived in our house, and we all sit there and watch Cheyenne and Bonanza, I Love Lucy, and all these kind of stuff. You know what I mean, right? It was the whole entertainment thing. Whereas, my son Marcus had a TV in his room. He had his own TV in his room, right? And he had his computer when he was, what, 12, you know what I mean, right? Whatever, So his things of life was moving and changing quite quickly anyhow. Life out there, the big bad world, was changing anyhow. Progress has been made quite quickly. The Second World War happened, they'd bombed London, we'd moved on, London had been rebuilt, all these homes and jobs was plentiful, Britain was booming, you had the swinging 60s, right? You burnt your bra, the reggae music came into being, ska, and all, and we all had that, you know what I mean, right? and all that was happening, and things were beginning to move. Fashion was moving, education, secondary, modern, secondary, high, middle school came into, so the whole way of life, anyhow, was evolving quite rapidly. And so the generation after me.
Story not done. Stay tuned for more heritage stories. If you enjoy these stories, please subscribe, share, and tell your friend them. Unity Does MAATer presents the stories of our Caribbean African elders of the Windrush generation. Legacy stories in Chapeltown. Come and add yours. Contact Unity Does MAATer on 07732 367 190 or email unitydoesmaater, MAATR, @gmail.com. Your stories, our legacy.